the RF 100 to 400 f5.6 to f8. Now, the first thing you can see, of course, is the size and weight comparison between these other lenses. And so this is another full frame compatible lens, which is amazing. But once again, I'll be mainly talking about crop sensor performance. And on a crop sensor camera, this is equivalent to about 160 to 640 millimeters, which will really open up so many more possibilities that you never would have had with a kit lens or with, a wider angle lens. So this lens has a 67 millimeter filter thread. It once again has a pretty much fully plastic body with a metal lens mount. And this lens comes in at 1.4 pounds. And then for pricing, the RF 100 to 400 comes in at about $650. So some of the pros of this lens is, of course, its substantial reach. This goes all the way up to a 640 millimeter focal length equivalent on a crop sensor camera. And so you can get amazing long distance photos, and you can just capture things that you would never be able to with any of these other lenses. Now this lens is also the only lens on this list with stabilization built in, and it also has very good stabilization. So you're not gonna get as shaky of images as you would with other lenses without stabilization. And of course, being such an extreme focal length, that is definitely a good thing to have. However, the f5.6 to f8 aperture is also a pretty big weakness of this lens. So being that slow of a maximum aperture means this lens will struggle a lot in lower light scenarios. You're gonna have to bump up your ISO quite a bit, which means you're gonna get noisier, grainier images. And I've personally found there's been situations where I just couldn't use this lens because it was too dark of a situation, whether it was indoors in a darker environment, or even, outdoors on a cloudy or darker day. This lens will kind of struggle getting enough light to give you a bright looking image without having to bump up your ISO so much that it'll add just a ton of noise to your images. So this lens definitely performs best in very well lit scenarios like, outdoors on a bright sunny day or indoors in a very well lit environment. Now this is also not a weather sealed lens, so definitely keep that in mind. Now also, this is a big and heavy lens, especially talking about on crop sensor RF cameras like the R100 here. I'm at 100 millimeters right now. If I go ahead and zoom in to 400 millimeters, look at that. So that's kind of something, I wouldn't say is a specific con of this lens, but you should definitely know how, front heavy and how kind of long this lens is. Now I did forget to mention, this does have an autofocus and manual focus switch, as well as a stabilizer switch on the side, which is really nice to have. And it also does have separate zoom, focus, and control rings. So there isn't that weird switch like on those other lenses, where you have to switch between having a control ring and having a focus ring. This has both of them all the time, so you can always have that control ring to program it to do whatever you want, whether it's change your aperture, ISO, or really anything in between. I think if you want to get into sports photography, sports videography, wildlife, stuff like that, where you need to get a very zoomed in perspective on something, this is the perfect lens for you. You really can't get a better Canon RF lens at this price point for what this lens can do. Of course you can get better lenses, but they're gonna be well over $1,000. I mean, over $2,000, over $3,000 for some of them even. So for 650 bucks, this is an amazing lens. Again, if you need that extremely long focal length.